Hello, welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews.
I love a yummy mummy.
And I'm Gary. And today we're going to review and discuss The Mummy from 1999, written and directed by Stephen Sommers. Ian, why don't you give us the synopsis for The Mummy?
Well, the story follows Evie and Jonathan Carnahan, who are working in Egypt and have uncovered a key belonging to Hamunaptra, the city of the dead. They find inside the key a map that will lead them to all the treasures hidden in this place and decide to use Brendan Fraser's character, Rick O'Connell, to help them find it. But when they get there, they realise that there is a curse on Hamunaptra and there is an evil mummy who, after being resurrected, is setting out to destroy the world.
The Mummy has been, a mainstay in the horror genre
Yeah.
and within cinema for quite a long time. Universal's monsters. The Mummy is pretty much one of the only original characters that was not adapted from a book, like Frankenstein or Dracula. And the very first Mummy film was out in 1932.
Yeah.
Played by Boris Karloff, who kind of immortalized that role. Universal would follow that film up many years later in 1940 with The Mummy's Hand, and would continue in 1942 with The Mummy's Tomb.
Nice.
There was quite a few other sequels to that one as well, although the original Mummy from 1932 never had any direct sequels, but the ones that came after sort of chronologically followed each other.
Yeah.
There would be a long gap then until 1959 when the Hammer horror series of films reinvented The Mummy with Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee. That led us all the way up then to 1999, where we have this version of The Mummy, which spawned 2 sequels and 4 spin-off movies.
Yeah.
And then that takes us to 2017, where Universal have relaunched The Mummy yet again as part of the Dark Universe.
Yeah.
Also, this 99 version of The Mummy kind of had a bit of a troubled start as well. Universal didn't really know which direction to take it in. This is coming from traditional horror roots.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the directors that they consulted with were going to continue to pursue that. The first person that they went to was Clive Barker.
Wow.
And Clive Barker wrote a screenplay which was modern day, where they would have had the remains of Imhotep. He would have been resurrected, and apparently the script was very dark, very violent, and filled with sexual content. I'm like, that sounds like Clive Barker film I wouldn't mind watching. They also consulted with Joe Dante, who eventually walked away from the project. They even consulted with George A. Romero, who had an entire script, again, set modern day, with Imhotep being resurrected and trying to find his lost bride and going on a revenge spree around all of these different museums to try and claim all of these artifacts that were pillaged and stolen.
Yeah.
Of course, Universal didn't like this script idea either, and so Stephen Sommers came along with sort of an updated version of the original 1932 Mummy film.
Yeah.
And he said to them, he basically pitched it to them that it's that version of the Mummy mixed with Indiana Jones. And the studio upped the budget from 15 million up to $80 million.
Damn.
And The Mummy was a fantastic box office hit, so much so that the studio rang Stephen Sommers the day of the premiere and said, "We need another one."
See, I remember The Mummy coming out, and I'm pretty sure I've never seen the original 1932 one. I know, you probably want to hit me, but at the same time, it's one of those classics. One of those classics where I know that if I want to sit down and watch a 1932 black and white movie starring Boris Karloff, I need to set 2 hours aside in my day to just sit down, shut the world off, and just envelop myself in this classic movie.
It's a very atmospheric film that's quite slow moving, and obviously the special effects aren't there, and there is a bit of hammy acting in it, but it really sets the tone.
But that's it. It's a classic. It's what the word classic was used for. When you've got like the Hammer horror movies, I'm a Hammer horror fan, but still the Mummy versions I've kind of avoided, because you've basically got Christopher Lee caked in makeup from head to toe and Peter Cushing doing his Van Helsing thing.
In a way, this is really the birthplace of the slasher genre. Yeah, it's the silent killer
Yeah.
slowly moving towards its victims, backing them into a corner and killing them.
And killing them. And then when this one came out, I was kind of excited, but at the same time, part of me was like, oh, it's kind of a kids movie. I don't need to watch that. I was watching a lot of crazy shit back in 1999. But then when you actually sit down and watch it, one of the first things that gets me is the opening with Egypt. It really sets it up quite nicely, where you basically got the pharaoh Seti the first, I think he was. He's riding around Egypt. It's looking kind of all glorious. Pyramids being built, statues being built, and then you've got Arnold Vosloo playing Imhotep. He has cemented himself as Imhotep for me. I know he's done a lot of other films. I remember him getting his ass handed to him by Jean-Claude Van Damme. I know he turned up in a couple of the G.I. Joe movies. But when I see him, I'm like, that's the Mummy. Stay away from him. It's the Mummy. And I realised, first time I watched it, this wasn't what I thought it was at first. It's not a kids' movie, because you have the whole mistress moment in Egypt where she's not allowed to be touched by any other man. And Imhotep's like, well, fuck you, I'm going to get me some of that. And when you see what she's wearing, you can kind of see why he'd want some of that.
It was pretty much a few beads, and the rest of it isn't just entirely body paint.
Yeah. But the pharaoh turns up and he notices that her paint has been smudged. And all of a sudden, Imhotep and the mistress kill him, assassinate him right there and then. And you're like, oh shit, what the fuck? This isn't kids. They've just killed this guy on screen. And then she gets murdered, but she tells Imhotep as he goes, you're the only one with the power to resurrect me. So I'll hold them off.
Well, she stabs herself. She refuses to be taken.
Yeah. And they take her to the Hamunaptra, and you get the whole moment where Imhotep is there doing his thing, and he gets stopped by all the guards, and so her soul is lost. And then we see the mummification of Imhotep, and all of his druids.
Imhotep, the mummy in this film, is not actually mummified.
Well, yeah, it's a special ceremony given to him. He gets his tongue ripped out.
One so horrible it had never before been bestowed.
He gets, scarabs feasting on him alive while he is entombed in this sarcophagus. And I always beg this question. Why, oh why, when you've got an evil force that you're trying to keep buried?
Well, he's not an evil force. He's just committed one of the greatest sins, basically.
Yes, but he has been noted in the timeline up to the point where, present day in the movie, that if he is resurrected, he will bring evil to the world, right?
He will be given almost unlimited power.
Right, so
and it's like, so why did the Egyptians have this set up in the first place?
Yeah, why did they leave him his powerful book?
But they were so, convinced that burying him entirely and having this special key was the only way to get him out, that no one would ever find it, ever.
Yeah.
But it's okay, we'll have this secret cult that will protect the tomb and make sure no one ever discovers it.
Wait, why don't you just cut his fucking head off the first time round? But I love that little transition as well, after you've got the big statue of Anubis, and the way the sand comes in and kind of, runs around it, and you start to watch it deteriorate, and it's a nice kind of time lapse.
The sands of time.
Yeah, and all of a sudden we're kind of present day. I wasn't too sure what time it was. I think it's around about the 30s. It's after World War One, but definitely before World War Two. And you've got Brendan Fraser joined up with the French Foreign Legion, fighting off some bandits around Hamunaptra. And there's quite a cool little battle sequence. Brendan Fraser, I've always been a big fan of.
I like that the general was the first one to retreat.
Yeah.
And then Benny's there and he's like, hey, O'Connell, like, as long as you have the courage, I'll stand beside you. And he sees them all marching and he's like, wait for me. And, of course, to recognise his face and his voice distinctly from Deep Rising, which was Stephen Sommers' previous movie to this one.
Brendan Fraser as well, California man, he's bedazzled.
George of the Jungle.
Yeah. But focusing mainly on the mummy, Rick O'Connell, I think, he he makes the character. I don't know if anybody else could have made the character as fun.
Well, the first person they offered it to was Sylvester Stallone.
Eh.
But Brendan Fraser really brings this character to life, and he is the vehicle for the audience for the film.
Yeah.
And, he kind of is a silly character. But Stephen Sommers wanted that, because if he was too straight-faced,
Yeah.
he believed that the audience wouldn't be able to get invested in the strange and surreal and crazy things that start happening. So keeping it light-hearted, and Brendan Fraser does that really, really well.
Yeah, like you said, it's kind of got that Indiana Jones touch to it. I mean, Harrison Ford is Indiana Jones, but Brendan Fraser's Rick is just as clumsy but a bit more action oriented. He doesn't need a whip. He's got fucking guns coming out of every orifice, it seems like. And that opening sequence where he's just firing off his rifle and then he's pulling out the handguns, then he's dropping the next 2 load of handguns, and you're just like, this guy's pretty badass. But when he's out of ammo, he kind of just resigns himself like, this is it. This is where I'm going to die. But you get that cool little moment where the sands shift and you see the mummy's or Imhotep's face in the sand, and you're like, there's something under there that we want to get away from. Then we're introduced to Rachel Weisz. Oh my god. Oh, yes. There's many words I want to use to say and talk about this lady. Competent actress, I'm going to go with.
Really?
Yeah, because, just
From you, it just sounds really weird. I thought it was a great set, and the set designers had to be very careful, because the whole rig was set that if one went, they would all go.
Yeah.
And you see her balancing on that ladder before she eventually falls forward, and you see the domino effect. I was just like, that was a great practical effect. It's a gimmick, and I like that. It also really set up how bumbling and kind of stupid this woman actually is, despite having lots of insight into Egyptian history.
Yeah, and Rachel Weisz does it very well. She's the damsel in distress. But for 1999, damsels in distress were short in supply. We wanted women to be strong characters. But the way this film is set, the time it's set, the screenplay that it's coming off from, the fact that that this evil presence is going to come out and the heroes are going to have to fight it, you need something. And the damsel in distress from Rachel Weisz really works. I also really, really like her brother, Jonathan, played by John Hannah. I've only really seen him in British TV programmes. I think he was in Cold Feet at one point, and he's done some detective programmes as well. And he's a really, really good TV actor. But I wasn't too sure about him being on the big budget screen.
For me, he is a massive overactor. Like the sequence when he's in there and they find the map and he's just overacting everything. I'm just like, wow, like he's a stage actor brought into film. But he still sells this kind of greedy sort of character quite well. And I'll never forget him as Batiatus from the TV series Spartacus. Just what a villain.
Yeah, I totally forgot that one. Yes, yeah, absolutely amazing. But in this, he's just funny. He's that comic relief every now and again.
But he has no respect for anything.
No.
It's like the first time you find him, he's jumped into the grave of some dead pharaoh or Egyptian in this museum, and he's just like waving it around like a puppet. It's like, damn.
Yeah, but it's like that line he says to his sister where she's like, "You lied to me. I'm your sister." And he goes, "So, why does that make you special?" I'm like, yes! Jonathan is actually quite realistic because he's in this strange land and he's just looking out for himself. He just wants to get rich, and he will take care of his sister when he needs to, but he's mainly going to use them to keep him alive when the shit hits the fan. They come across Rick, and Rick has been arrested for looking for a good time, we're told, by an Arab, and he's all being set up to hang. But they know that they need him to show them the way to Hamunaptra because they had showed the curator of the library the map, and he had accidentally burnt it. No, he was trying to keep it hidden from them. And this is what gets me is
that obvious, was it?
Yes, but it's the way that they all stand there in that little office, and they're like, this is supposed to be where the evil mummy's buried. Yes, well, we better not find it. Right, okay. We're going to go get this guy to show us the way to the city of the dead. But there's an evil fucking mummy there. Leave it alone.
Yeah, but these guys don't know about that.
No.
And so, yeah, the hanging sequence of Rick is kind of brutal when you look at it, especially when you know that behind the scenes that Brendan Fraser was almost killed during the shooting of this sequence, where when they hang him, he passed out and practically died and had to be resuscitated on set. It's like, damn.
That's method acting, that is.
Yeah.
That is method acting. And the fact that in the scene you've got them looking and it's like, the rope didn't break. And Brendan Fraser's like, You're thinking,
well, it was his neck that didn't break.
Yeah. But they all get together and they start planning their little expedition. And they get on this ferry boat, I believe, and come across a group of Americans who are also on their way to Hamunaptra, being led by Benny. Benny had escaped from the French Foreign Legion and had decided to make some money by leading these Americans off. But he is a big fucking traitor. And so you just cannot trust Benny, even in his little weekly kind of snidey remarks. And I do kind of love that way where Brendan Fraser stood there with Benny and they're talking and they're looking at Rachel Weisz. And then he's like, time to go, Benny. And he just throws him overboard.
But that's when he notices that there are wet footprints on the boat.
Yes.
And before you know it, they're under siege. They're being attacked by the cultish protectors of Imhotep.
Yeah. The film does action sequences a lot. And I'm not sure if they do them very well and keep the pace going, or they do them too much and it makes the film slightly jagged.
For me, the action sequences in the film are they're very well paced, and they come at just the right moments when you need a bit of action and a bit of excitement just to keep you going. Intercut with these great little character moments. Now, all of the characters, every single one of the characters in this film is a walking stereotype. But that gives the film a universal appeal worldwide, where you can easily relate to or identify any character almost at a glance. And so that makes it very simplistic, but still quite enjoyable, because the dialogue is quite fresh and quite witty, and the gunplay is almost exciting as well.
Yeah, but it's like what we said before we started recording. Neither of us realised that we haven't seen this film in a very long time, and it's 2 hours long. And the first hour, you get that part of Imhotep at the beginning, and then nothing else until they get to the pyramid. And I was sat there watching it for that first hour, and I'm just like, okay, these action sequences are cool looking. You've got the battle sequence of Hamunaptra, you've got the battle sequence on the boat. I love that guy who gets stabbed in the eye with the candle while he's trying to get Evie, and then her brother accidentally knocks him into the fire, and you see him running around on fire. And O'Connell's running around shooting his 2 guns, and you've got the Americans firing off all over the place. But I'm still sat there like, did the film need this? Could this have been avoided and just had an epic journey finding Imhotep and bringing him in quicker? I'm not too sure, because for me, the film does it very well, that it sets up that this city is lost. So you've got to go on this big journey. Now, you take into account the big journey they go on, you take into account the character building that they've got to build as well, and also the secret cultist brotherhood. That would actually take an hour just to explain, just to get it all set up before you bring in the mighty Imhotep. But the action sequence on that boat, everything's going overboard. Everybody's throwing everything overboard. And both Gary and I both laughed at the same point where Brendan Fraser turns to the little Arab guy and says, I'll go get some help, and just leaps overboard.
Wait here! I'll go get help! Right!
And so it's now a race between our heroes and the American treasure hunters to get to the city of the dead first. But they all get to a certain point at the same time anyway, and they have to wait until the sun comes over the horizon, which reveals in all of its glory the city of the dead. And then it's a camel versus horse race to get there first. It doesn't really matter who gets there first, because they all start wandering these pyramids and these underground tunnels and start finding remains of mummies and trying to find treasure.
Yes.
And the Arab guy, he stumbles across these blue gems bedded into the wall before he realizes that these are actually dormant scarabs. And we get an effect that was okay at the time that looks a little bit ropey today.
Yeah.
Where you see his skin contorting as it moves its way up his chest all the way up to his face. It's kind of horrific, but it's kind of played for laughs when he's kind of screaming like a madman running through these tunnels.
But I like that as well, where they come across the tombs. You know, you're watching a mummy movie, it's set in Egypt, you want tombs, you want corridors of sand and cobwebs. Setting the film in the past, and then going into something which is even further more ancient and in the past, you get caught up in it, and you're just like, what's behind the next corner? Is the mummy going to pop out and grab us? And so you get brought into it. Especially when you have the Americans, they come across their little site, and Evie and Rick and her brother go off to another site, and it's all set around the same part, this underneath the statue of Anubis. And the Americans pull out this box, or they open up this thing which shoots high pressurized salt acid in the face of the workers, and you're like,
yeah, it's pretty gross. I like that. Booby traps.
Yeah, booby traps. We want more booby traps. And they pull out this box and place it on the floor, and the guy starts reading from it. Whoever opens this will be cursed and will be killed by the mummy.
Put that back.
Yeah. Let's not touch that. Let's just move on. But they're all like, oh, let's see what's inside it. And at the exact same time, you've got Evie and her brother and Rick, who've come across this massive sarcophagus. I wonder what's inside that, Gary. But it's a conjunction around about the hour 10 minute mark, where they've opened up the case and brought out the Book of the Dead, and they found the mummy. So you know something's going to happen that's going to bring that mummy to life. I love Rachel Weisz, but in this, she's a stupid bitch.
I mean, what sort of character would find a Book of the Dead and just read it instantly, aloud?
Well, seems fairly obvious.
But we needed that, don't we? We needed it. We need
to resurrect the mummy.
We need to resurrect the mummy, and now we've got the mummy back on. And like you said about the special effects, back in 1999, I remember reading this big thing that the special effects for the mummy were kind of groundbreaking.
Well, it was done by Industrial Light and Magic, who are, one of the biggest companies in special effects.
Yeah, and taking into account all the stuff with the sand, all the stuff with the scarabs, and then bringing the mummy to life as well. I use looked as a past
at the
tense.
time. Yeah.
At the time looked really well. Nowadays, you kind of look past it, and I sit there thinking, would I have this problem if it had been practical effects? Would I still be sat here going, oh, it doesn't look so good nowadays because of the practical effects? I do like it more when you get the mould of Arnold Vosloo and the sleight of the mummy. When he's all CGI, it looks kind of cool. You can see inside his jawline, the scarabs are walking around. But I get more of a spine tingling sensation when you see him with that metal mask on and he's got the purple hood. I enjoy that a bit more than the CGI-ness.
So the heritage of the Mummy films is horror, and this film only very lightly treads into the horror genre with a few scenes. And you don't actually get to see anything. You hear him scream and it cuts away. And it cuts back to him later on, and his eyes are removed.
Yes.
Again, the special effects have waned over time, but the horror of it, especially then when you find out that Imhotep also took his tongue. So he can't even tell you. He can just kind of gurgle about the horrific event, and you're like, damn.
Yeah.
That's quite scary. And there's certain horror moments that would come later on where Imhotep would find the Americans when they're hiding in this small town, and it cuts to silhouette, and you see the body get picked up in the air. Wow, my imagination painted such a brilliant picture, and all you did was silhouette it on the wall.
I back that up as well with the fact that, they would have probably have done the same thing in the 30s and maybe in the Hammer horror movies as well when they're showing somebody get killed. They can't... They didn't have the effects back then. They didn't have the budget, or they weren't allowed to show that much blood. So cutting away to a silhouette, like you said, your imagination does so much more. And that's when I realised, after that first American got killed, I realised that the film had set up all of these great pieces really, really well. But you were set to follow Rick, Evie, and to an extent Jonathan. Everybody else is cannon fodder. And that keeps the second half of the movie kind of going it was already at a breakneck pace with little slow character building points. And then the next hour is just like, boom, there we go. The mummy is here and he's just fucking killing people. He recognizes inside Evie his mistress.
Well, this has been something that's come all the way from the 1932 script all the way up to the abandoned scripts where the mummy is trying to find his long lost love and resurrect the soul of her, or find a body to put her soul into.
Yeah.
Whether it was the actual reincarnation of her or just a vessel, that idea has remained.
Yeah, and so once he's managed to resurrect himself by sucking the life essence from all the people that disturbed his tomb and make himself human looking, I suppose. He looks human, but he is still, in essence, a mummified wreck, just with all this magical power. He realizes that I'm taking this woman. I'm taking her and none of you can stop me. Brendan Fraser tries everything. He tries guns. He tries cats. Nothing will stop this thing. And the fact that the mummy has also used his powers to change the world as well. He makes an eclipse happen, fire fall from the sky, locusts come out and poison the local populace, and they all become underneath his spell. So you're just like, oh,
they all break out in boils and swells as well.
Yeah, and it gives it, for me, it gives it the scale of, you're supposed to follow these guys as your heroes. Why? Because there is nobody else. This place is this whole kind of town, desert, is cut off from the rest of the world.
There is one more hero, and we saw them at the beginning when Connor was fighting with the French Legion.
Yeah,
and then we saw him again briefly, and then he turned up in their camp before they awoke the mummy, and there's a massive gunfight.
Yeah,
and there's something about him. He has the presence of a hero.
Yeah,
but shrouded in mystery.
Oded Fair.
That's
Oded
right.
Fair?
Yeah.
Playing Ardef Bey, part of the cultists.
Exactly. You mentioned his name, and I just thought it was great on Stephen Sommers' part to use that name, because in the original The Mummy, the mummy is called Imhotep, and when he's resurrected and looks human, he walks around and he renames himself Ardef Bey.
Ah,
so I was like, there's a
nice.
great little nod there to
Nice.
the fans of the original film, and also The Mummy. Boris Karloff wears that red fez, and Benny spends the whole film wearding that red fez. So I was just like, there's lots of little nods to that very original film that I really like finding in this remake.
Yeah, once Ardef Bey, he hooks up with Rick and Jonathan and Evie, and they realised, okay, there's the Book of the Dead, we need the Book of Life, and the Book of Life is buried near the Book of the Dead, and if we can get that book and we can translate it, we can take away Imhotep's power, and once he's human, we can kill him off. But Imhotep comes along and goes, I'm taking her, and I'm going to kill you all as well. But she convinces them, no, leave him alive for like 5 seconds. But the guys escape, and they all head back to Hamunaptra. And I do love the little flying bit as well, where Rick comes across this old British pilot from World War One, who's kind of on his last few days, but he just needs one last adventure.
I love Winston. He's such a funny character. You know, it's just the fact that he's looking for excitement. He's told that he'll probably never return from this mission, and it's to save the world. And he's like, "Sign me up!"
yeah.
I like that.
Rescue the damsel in distress, kill the bad guy, and save the world.
I mean, it's a gimmick, it's a trope,
but the sequence is cool as well. You've got Arnold Vosloo doing that whole mimicking of the sand and the sandstorm coming on. You've got the guys hanging on the wing of the plane, especially Ardeth Bay, who's looking crazy, like what the hell?
Loving it.
And they crash. It always reminds me of The English Patient for some reason. Maybe it's just because of the plane and sand, but they crash and the guys escape, and we watch Winston, who's got a big smile on his face, sink into the sand, and you're kind of like,
it plays that music.
Yeah. You're kind of like, yes, that was a nice, cool little moment. And now we're back in the tombs, and Imhotep is using his power to resurrect the princess.
Now, there is also another resurrection, which it made me second look at any hieroglyphs that I see. When you see the sort of Anubis and other workers in the walls.
Yeah.
And then when they jump out, animated and vengeful, was just like, holy shit, that's such a cool idea.
Yeah, that transitioned really well, because you're looking, you're just like, is it going to come out? And they just appear. I question, though, how the fuck they go through floors. Because I like the idea of hands appearing through the sand, but I sit there trying to work out the many levels that are inside a pyramid, and where Rick's group are, and where Imhotep's group are, and where the mummies are coming from. And the only thing I could work out was, because they're dead and they're magical, they make themselves part of the stonework. They make themselves part of the sand to break out. Because trying to break through multiple levels, digging through, that would take like fucking days, even for a mummified corpse. But it just turns into another big action fest.
Now, as great as most of the action and set pieces have been, this is the one, the big climax of the film is the one I felt was the weakest.
Really?
The first time watching it back in 1999, brilliant, absolutely loved it, enjoyed the action pieces, but watching it now, I can't help but see and feel how well choreographed the fight is, and knowing that at least in the other sequences, Brendan Fraser had other people around him, when it's just him on his own, and then the CGI mummies put in on top. Yeah, I'm just like, I can tell now that it's kind of a dance.
Yeah. But then I suppose at the same time, like we said, it's been kind of made like that. Like we said, it's family orientated.
It also annoyed me that throughout all of this climactic fight sequence, the mummy just stands in the background on the stairwell, doing nothing. And I'm like, Imhotep, you don't even need your goons here. You have the power to just kill Rick like that. You have your sacrifice on the altar right now. What are you waiting for? Just to be defeated, really?
Yeah, and that does get me. I would have preferred him fighting away while they're trying to defeat him, but he doesn't jump in until like the last few moments when they've got the upper hand.
Exactly. He the forces split up, and his resurrected wife, who's still a cadaver at this moment, is trying to fight Evie to get the book. Yeah. Whilst Jonathan and Rick are fighting the undead. And Imhotep's like, do I go and help her? Or do I go and help them? Or do I go and help her?
You're an all-powerful fucking wizard!
It's too late. She's just been defeated now by your resurrected goon squad, because Jonathan's read from the pages of the Book of Life, and now they're reading the next pages to send him off. And I was like, you were useless. You've been so powerful. Yeah. And now you've just squandered this opportunity. It's like,
threw it away.
So that's why I found the climactic battle end sequence to be a bit of a letdown after such good setup and build up, and the payoff just almost fell short.
I always do like that little chariot moment though, where the
Yes, where
chariot
his
comes
soul
down.
or it gets grabbed out
Yeah,
of him.
his power, I don't know, but that just the way it flows through him and it pulls that out of him, and yet Imhotep is still there, and he's now human. Gets jabbed with the sword by Rick, and that's it. He falls into that pool of oily substance stuff, dragged back to the underworld. The temple, Benny, you had it. You had it in your hand, Benny. You had all that gold. You could have just left, but you got greedy. And when you got greedy, you got stupid. And you put the gold on the destruction switch of the pyramid.
Well, it's not actually a pyramid. They don't go into any pyramids in this film, but
Well, the ruins. I mean, it's
Yeah.
got a self-destruct mechanism.
yeah.
You know, but it's still that's a really cool bit. You kind of know everybody else is escaping, and even after everything they've gone through, Rick is still willing on helping Benny, which I kind of don't understand. After everything Benny has kind of done to you, and the way he's been working with Imhotep and killing off these Americans, you're still going to try and help him escape. But he doesn't really escape. He ends up back in the gold room. The lights all break off, and all the scarabs come up. And then the lights go out, and you just hear that scream, and it's all gone. You're like, yeah, he definitely got his. He definitely got his.
But then, surprisingly, Ardif is still alive as well. We saw him fighting the zombies down in the tunnels, and Rick threw dynamite in there, and was like, oh, that's kind of a shame.
Yeah.
But he's turned up at the end like, no, I'm not dead yet.
Oh,
I'm here for the sequel now.
yes.
And they ride off into the sunset, and we see the sun glimmer off the gold that Benny had already put on the back of the camels. It's like, yeah, it's kind of cool for the heroes that they don't even realise that they have all this wealth with them.
And even though the film would go off in the sequels, this one ends very well. That it could have just
ended, yeah.
Could have just ended. My favourite scenes, I really like the whole opening act with ancient Egypt, the pharaoh, just the scale of it. It just looks really, really nice, and you've got the whole priestess bit, with the beads, the beads, and then the murder of the pharaoh. After that, it's just the comedy moments. Benny being thrown overboard. I really like Benny's moments. But when he gets his comeuppance and he's getting thrown overboard or he's getting knocked off the camel, it's really good. I like the standoff in the dig site where everyone's pointing their guns at each other and they keep putting their guns down. And then somebody says something, they keep putting the guns back up. Down, up, down, up. And it's just like, right, let's just get out of here before somebody hurts themselves. Anything to do with scarabs, be there one nibbling through shoes or whole fucking waves of them sweeping over people. I love the sequence between them opening the chest and then finding the sarcophagus. It's like the penultimate moment of the movie. You're kind of screaming at them not to open it, but you know that they have to because you've still got a fucking hour to go. And if they don't open it, it's going to be really, really boring. And my last favourite scene is the cat scene where he's been Imhotep's been scared off by the cat once, but then there's that sequence where Brendan Fraser comes running into the room and goes, "Hey, look at this!" and holds the cat up and just scares him off.
There are lots of great little moments in the film. There's lots of great moments of comedy. Like we said, with the Arab sort of wandering around on the boat waiting for help. Just absolutely great line.
Yeah.
Again, there's another similar one when they're in the tunnels and Jonathan comes down the rope and he's like, "Oh, what is that smell?" "Oh, it's our friend here." It's just, they're stereotypical sort of characters and tropey jokes, but the delivery is really quite good.
Yeah.
I also liked all of the scenes with Ardif Bey. Udo Fair, just a great presence.
Yes.
It's just like this guy could be a great actor. It's a
Yeah.
shame that he would continue to show up in Rob Schneider films and Resident Evil, and
Yeah, but it's still in those he was still good.
he was still good.
He
He was
was
just
still
in
good.
terrible films.
Yeah.
So I guess my other favourite scene, and I think the best effect, which was also used in the trailer, which is the giant sand effect across the desert with Imhotep's face in it, swallowing that plane. It's just like, that was fantastic. That effect still looks good today as well. And some of the effects towards the end, when the city of the dead's exploding and you see sand firing up into the air,
Yeah.
it's like, some of those look really good, and some of the bits in there also not so good. So it's a good mix. I do have to recommend this version of The Mummy. You know, it's a popcorn flick.
Yes.
It has very, very light elements of horror, great comedy, and some really good special effects and some really lackluster special effects. I felt like the film was maybe half an hour too long. The first hour is my favourite part. The setup, the build-up, the introduction to the characters, the mystery, the adventure. And then once it's then paint by numbers to the ending, followed by a lackluster fight sequence, in my opinion, kind of leaves it a little bit weak. But when the film ends, part of me still goes, I would like to go on another adventure with this cast.
Yeah.
And it's only a shame that the second film doesn't live up to the first film. So, but I still recommend the first film.
I definitely recommend The Mummy. Like Gary said, it's a popcorn flick. Saturday afternoon, Sunday afternoon, you know, you're suffering from a hangover or you just want to sit and chill, you could slap this on. I think any rendition of the Mummy story, maybe not Tom Cruise's, I haven't seen it yet, but Boris Karloff is amazing. You know, Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee are amazing. And Arnold Vosloo in this one is just as good. If you're a fan of Brendan Fraser, you're going to love him in this. If you're a fan of Rachel Weisz, she's stupid in this, but she's really, really good. John Hannah's really good. You know, Oded Fehr's really, really good. At the same time, once you finish this one, The Mummy Returns isn't bad. It just leads on into some stupid stuff. The Dragon Emperor isn't bad. I just don't like the fact that they changed Rachel Weisz, because that's just really confusing. But The Mummy, 1999, good stuff.
Thanks for watching Off the Shelf Reviews.